He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is The Alex Marlow Show.
All right, so why Insured Friday on The Alex Marlow Show? We made it, gang, or did we? Does it even matter? Does time even matter? I don't think it matters. It's all... We're here. We got a fresh show for you today. I spoke with Senator Sheehy's team briefly. He had to make a plane trip during our recording window, so we'll try to catch up with him next week. So you're stuck with me today, but that's not so bad. Seems like you guys are digging what I'm putting out there. I've never received more email than I have in the last 24 hours from you guys, so I appreciate that very much. Keep it coming at aloha@alexmarlow.com. It means a lot, and especially when we're kind of in this very chaotic environment where the news and personal life are blurred together. But I'll start with a non-fire story. Big news today, Judge Juan Merchan sentencing President Trump to unconditional discharge, no penalty, but the conviction is upheld. So his branding as a convicted felon will last a little while longer. This was a semi-surprise. The semi-surprise is that the Supreme Court had the opportunity today to intervene and to throw everything out. There's myriad reasons why this case should have been thrown out. This is an area of my research of late, and I'll have more details on that in the coming months or so. But we're going to do deep dives on this show on all of the various Trump cases. I really do think it's a historic series of events, the lawfare that's been waged against President Trump, and it's worth a deep reflection so that it never happens again. But this would have been one of the off-ramps for the Supreme Court to give President Trump, where they could have said that the conditions here are so pressing that we need to put this thing out of its misery. We got to put it down like a dog. And there were all the conservatives were going to vote to do that. The few liberals were going to vote not to do that. And then it came down to the moderates, and all we had to do was pick up one of the moderates. I'm talking about Roberts and Barrett, and we lost both of them. So both of them sided with the libs in order to basically not treat this like a special case. So that's the key thing, is that they had the opportunity to treat this because, I don't know, seems kind of special that we're talking about branding the president of the United States a convicted felon and that he will assume office and will now have to govern with that branding, that might be a distraction. And it might be in the best use of the public to try to expedite this thing getting thrown out, which I think will eventually take place during the series of appeals. And I'll walk through how that's going to go momentarily. But this would have been one of the off-ramps where the Supreme Court could have said, this is ridiculous. No more of this. We're throwing this out. And instead what they did is they didn't side against Trump as much as they sided with the system. They said that Trump's conviction, there was nothing that was so outrageous about it that they needed to expedite throwing it out. They will allow for it to go through the regular appeals process. But for those of you who forget the nature of this case, this is the one that started with Alvin Bragg, who ran specifically in New York to try to get Trump. He was explicit about this. And we found this in the courtroom of Judge Juan Merchan. Merchan, who is a Democrat-connected person. He's donated to Democrat candidates. His daughter's a Democrat activist. And this was framed as the hush money case with Stormy Daniels, but it really had nothing to do with hush money. Trump and Daniels had an alleged encounter 20-odd years ago at a golf charity event, and Daniels claimed that she and Trump slept together, and Trump has denied that. There's really no corroborating evidence that it even took place, which is something that's widely overlooked. And they stayed in touch for a little while after, and eventually Trump paid her to keep her silence as part of a catch and kill strategy, which is a strategy where you try to buy stories, you pay for the stories so that they don't hit the press. This is something that's very common in with the political operatives, with tabloid journalism. It's part of this world that this takes place. And Trump was trying to do that with some of these cases, and he thought he had done that successfully here, but he had not. But that was the intention. There was no admission that he was he'd done something improper, done something illegal. But really, the charge that they concocted against him, this was the one where they had to piggyback the charges on top of each other to supercharge a misdemeanor that had the statute of limitations already run out on it. So they had to try to turn it into a felony, supercharge it by saying that this misdemeanor was done in order to commit a felony. And that felony that they concocted, they devised this in a lab, Alvin Bragg did, is that it was some sort of a campaign violation that Trump had not labeled the payout to Stormy Daniels for her to not talk about, perhaps falsely, their encounters. That wasn't labeled basically payout to porn star on campaign records. That did not take place was basically the violation. And so they had made it so that they were implying Trump had committed a felony by falsifying business records, by not explaining that money was earmarked to go to this porn star, even though maybe nothing happened. Maybe he was just trying to get her not to eat up press time with salacious, scandalous stuff. So we don't know if it's hush money or not. We know that what it is Trump didn't want this headache, and he tried to pay her to not give him this headache while he was running for president. And so this was also deemed by Merchan's court, the way that it was framed, is it was framed that Trump was doing this to sort of rig an election. And if the public had full knowledge, then it would have hurt Trump. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. We'll spend a lot more time on this, but the top to bottom, this was insane. First of all, we've never seen anything like that before, where we're trying to take something that is a lapsed misdemeanor and somehow come up with some way to turn into a felony. Obviously, that's political, pure lawfare. The next thing. Merchan let Stormy Daniels testify, which was insane. I mean, she is a professional provocateur. She is a porn star. She's a porn director. Her whole business is to get people to pay attention to her. She's in the attention business. And of course she gets in and she starts talking about all sorts of scandalous, salacious stuff that even Merchan said that he lamented that he let her do that. And who knows if any of it's true. None of us know if it's true. And she even admitted that she was only in it to make money. She said so. She owned up to it. She also changed her story repeatedly. She had said that she had framed it though she was not a Me Too victim, that she was a willing participant in the beginning. And then her testimony was about how Donald Trump was really big and he was imposing and he was blocking the door. So now all of a sudden it's a Me Too thing. So this thing stinks to high heavens, all of it does. And the worst part of it all was the fact that the jury was never informed. You were never given jury instructions. And was never informed about what actually, and not just the jury, the defense, what this alleged second crime was that would supercharge the first crime. The first crime was that he falsified business records to do some sort of a payout. But Merchan essentially laid out a multiple choice of 3 other violations that Trump could have done. And no one knew about this until the jury instructions. So we didn't know until the very end of the case what the second crime was, allegedly. And if you really want to be technical about it, he kind of laid out 3 crimes. So it was really stacking 3 crimes on top of each other. All of that will just get too confusing for the sake of this conversation now. This will come up more down the road if you want more detail. But overall, no one's ever tried that before. It's never even been tried. There's no precedent for it at all. But Merchan thought he could get away with it because he had a very favorable jury pool. Alvin Bragg thought he'd get away with it because he had a favorable judge and a favorable jury pool. And of course, the media was going to make a big stink about it because the media is who they are. So it seemed like there was a handful of constitutional violations, due process, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, lots of different things that will break down over time. But from my vantage point, this thing is going to get appealed and it's going to get overturned. And the Supreme Court had a chance to just cut it off today and just say, hey, you know what? Presidential immunity, he's about to be president. The whole point of the court system is not to harass the person who's supposed to be leading the free world. And we know he's not going to be sentenced to anything. He's not going to be serving any time. Let's get rid of everything. But they didn't do that. So now Trump is going to go through an appeals process. There's a sort of a mid-level appeal, and then there's the highest level in New York, and then it'll eventually get to the Supreme Court if it's not been overturned there. So we could see 3 steps. And my prediction, I guess, is that this will end up at the Supreme Court and probably in the second half of his presidency, maybe 3-4 years from now. So all because of the branding, that Trump must be branded a convicted felon. That was the goal. You left-wing DA, left-wing judge, left-wing jury pool. It was always going to be a conviction, always from the start. This was completely rigged from the start. Alan Dershowitz said this at Breitbart News in a column for us. He said right away that it doesn't really matter what Trump is being accused of, given this jury pool and their anti-Trump animosity, given the DA Bragg, given the Judge Merchan, a Democrat donor with a Democrat activist family. There was no chance that Trump was going to win this. There was never a chance. So the hope lies in higher courts, and particularly the Supreme Court. So a huge disappointment. And you got to point the finger at Barrett more than anyone. She's the biggest disappointment. Roberts disappoints a lot. But Trump picked Barrett, and this one seemed like a no-brainer. And she went with the libs. So a lot more on that. But Merchan is despicable. What he did, I got some audio of him. Let's play some audio that Misty dutifully pulled for me. Let's play him talking from the courtroom today.
It is the office of the president that bestows those far-reaching protections to the office holder. And it was the citizenry of this nation that recently decided that you should once again receive the benefits of those protections, which include, among other things, the Supremacy Clause and presidential immunity. It is through that lens and that reality that this court must determine a lawful sentence. After careful analysis, in obedience to governing mandates, and pursuant to the rule of law, this court has determined that the only lawful sentence that permits entry of a judgment of conviction without encroaching upon the highest office in the land is an unconditional discharge, which the New York State Legislature has determined is a lawful and permissible sentence for the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree. Therefore, at this time, I impose that sentence to cover all 34 counts. Sir, I wish you Godspeed as you assume your second term in office. Thank you.
Disgusting. This is all fake. This is all fake. It's a head fake, and Barrett and Roberts fell for it. It is a scarlet letter of convicted felon. That was the goal. Merchan's maintaining that, and he's acting like he's taking the moral high ground because he's not sentencing him to anything. But all that's trying to do is try to encourage Trump to not even bother appealing and to move on with that branding. And then if he does appeal, he's going to have to deal with it for a year. Best case scenario, 2 years. Next best case scenario, conceivably up to 4 years, I think, for this to get through. There's another angle. You mentioned the Supremacy Clause. I didn't even get to that yet. That's where with the U.S. Constitution, it establishes that federal law takes precedent over state law. And this case, it really was a act of Congress. Congress creates federal law, but Bragg was essentially interpreting federal law differently than the federal government does. And there's this concept called the Federal Election Campaign Act, FECA. And there was a suggestion by Bragg that Trump had violated this. But Bragg doesn't know this law at all. It's federal law. Bragg is not. He's a DA of New York. He's standing here. There's no jurisdiction. The Trump campaign tried to call FECA experts, and Merchan didn't let them testify. All this is such a rabbit hole. I could do an hour show on this. This is all civil violations, in my opinion. So, the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, does not consider NDA payments FECA violations. They don't. It's established. We've had cases on this. And Biden's DOJ had the opportunity to prosecute Trump in this regard, and they didn't take it. Why not? Because it's not a real crime. It's a fake crime that was concocted by left-wing DA, left-wing judge, left-wing jury. And Merchan is just trying to charm you. He's a handsome guy. He's an immigrant. He seems nice. It's like all this stuff that makes you maybe think, oh, yeah, he's got this under control. No, he's an operative. Oh, gross stuff. Really upsetting. Poor Trump. I'm glad he doesn't have to deal with thinking maybe they want to put me in jail anymore. I guess that goes away. But he knows, he gets it. He gets that this is a big joke. He spoke as well. Let's play this.
Now, if you look, my attorney alluded to it, the top legal scholars and legal pundits in this country, the ones that are quoted all the time on television, that are making their views felt, and highly respected people, have said, everyone, virtually everyone that I know of, I haven't seen any to the contrary, not one. And these people are not exactly friends of mine, to put it mildly. But they all said this is a case that should have never been brought. It's an injustice of justice.
He's right.
Very respected. Jonathan Turley, Andy McCarthy, Judge David Rifkin, a wonderful man who just passed away, by the way. Greg Jarrett, Ellie Honig from CNN, of all places. CNN said that. Paul Ingrassia.
Yeah, it's the Honig is did a really good job on this from CNN. Very odd. CNN, at least they don't seem to fire the people who are good, who are not, who step out of line. Like that Scott Jennings guy who does really well, who's a Republican. They keep putting him out there every day. That's nice. Yeah, Ellie Honig, one of their legal guys, was right about everything on this. So that's kind of an odd look. I like to point this stuff out because then when I rag on them, you know that I'm not just shooting from the hip. I'm trying to be fair. But he was excellent on this. And we're getting rolled here. We're getting rolled. You got to see through it. And hopefully I can help all of you do this. But I'm very sad to see the cowardice of Amy Coney Barrett. And I was a supporter of her confirmation. I thought she seemed like a good pick when she was picked. So doesn't bode well over time. Hopefully we can compel her to get some stones, but she doesn't have it. So the election's over. You can't harm Trump. But again, we could be looking at a 3 or 4 year process here. I don't know how Merchan charmed Barrett and Roberts. Seem like I could see through it, but I guess not. So there's no more danger for Trump per se, but it's the branding. And this is probably the worst day Trump's going to have. And it's still not a terrible day in that he doesn't have to deal with prison, but the branding, and now he's got to go through this rigmarole. So, let's see if there's anything else I have to share about that. So many unconstitutional things happened in this case. All right. The interest in the country, in my opinion, is you discharge him completely. But Merchan, he wanted to get in this final judgment before Trump became president. I mentioned this earlier on the show that they were just trying to get him in. They want to get it done by the 20th because we're in this gray area. Because they can't really do much to him unless Trump pursues it while Trump is in office. So Merchan can't put his foot on the gas. So I think he wanted to get in that final judgment, and that's what we got. And not good. Not good. Okay. All right. Moving on. Let's do some fire updates. There's a lot of them. I will continue to recommend the reporting of my colleagues at Breitbart News at Breitbart.com. If you go to the Breitbart Fight Club, my last 3 interviews there are the Breitbart Confidential show that I do, which is an interview show with one of my experts every day. Has been with Joel Pollack, who has been the #1 reporter in America on this topic because he was right in the middle of this. He's a great reporter anyway, and his Palisades resident and integral part of that community. A lot of really bad reports coming out. Los Angeles Times reporting that the major Pacific Palisades reservoir was offline and empty for cosmetic maintenance. One of the things I do with Joel today in the interview, and I'll do some of it here, I'll replicate some of it, but if you want the full thing, I go over there to the Fight Club. One of the things that is trying to give you things to respond to liberal friends and family who are taking issue with some of the politicization of the fires. Because you guys have heard my quote. My quote is, if you do not note that this is a failure in Democrat governance, then you're the political one. The apolitical approach is to admit the Democrats screwed up. That's why you're seeing people like that woman, Sarah Foster, that I mentioned yesterday. I was following, my wife was pointing out to me one of the a reality TV star she follows on Bravo, who says, I'm a liberal, I'm a Democrat, and Newsom and Bass have got to go. People are getting it. People are understanding that they have absolutely failed their own voters. So I wish people would have voted properly, but hindsight's 50-50, as they say. Or is it 20-20? Whatever it is. Hindsight's 20-20. And so we can't go back in time. We don't have a time machine. So let's get these people on our side going forward. That is my big push. That's my big crusade. Ron DeSanctimonious was at the governor's meeting, and Trump pushed him out in the corner, which was awesome because Trump met with all the governors. But they were asked about this, and DeSantis had a very good answer. I want to play this.
The president-elect or for a president to be criticizing.
Is it appropriate for people in your industry to try to create division and to try to create narratives anytime these things happen? Now, you're not as interested in doing that because Newsom is a D. If Newsom was a Republican, you guys would you would have it nailed to the wall for what they're doing over there.
Great point. It's good. It's simply put, but the media asks, why are you guys politicizing it? Like, what are you guys talking about? If this was a Republican governor, you guys would be nonstop. And DeSantis knows this. And that's why DeSantis, when he's staring at the barrel of a natural disaster, he's getting the drone footage of all the linemen lined up, all the trucks, people ready to go to get deployed. So he knows his drill better than any governor on the planet, that he knows that it's a double crisis if I fail my citizens. It's a crisis for them on a personal level, and it's a crisis for all of us in the media. Reservoir shut down for cosmetic maintenance. I got some reports from a firefighter reached out, tried to fill me in on some of the background that we were seeing. And let me see, I'm pulling up some of my details. He said, so the water stopped working at 2:15 in the afternoon, the first day of the fire. So we're in day, what is it, 3 or 4 now, 72 hours in. So the reservoirs were empty. There were only 250 firefighters, according to this report that I got. That's 3,000 short of what's necessary for something like this. Maybe we'll figure out that number is actually too low. 3,000 sounds low. Massively short on engines, massively short on trucks. The department had been gutted. There are apparently 60 fire stations in LA City, not the county, like places like where I live, which is very close to the fire, but not in the county, but not in the city, where we're getting nervous out here. Thankfully, it's looking good, but we're not fully confident, as you can imagine. 60 fire stations short, 3,000 firefighters short, and this source, you can imagine his politics if he's reaching out to us, suggesting DEI is the problem. That the diversity hiring, the worrying whether or not your fire chief's a lesbian or not, has not worked out. Turned people off, and they're moving too slow getting people hired because they got to keep their quotas. Incredibly dark stuff. During the interview with Joel, he was tearing up, talking about how he and his neighbors were scooping water out of the gutter because there was water coming out of the hydrants. There just wasn't enough pressure to use a fire hose. So it was dribbling out into the gutter. And he's using his son's baseball bucket for baseballs to scoop it up and to put out fires. What a memory. Do people understand how bad this is going to be? People's neighborhoods are just completely decimated. People's whole concept of this country is going to change because of this. People in idyllic streets who used to walk to school and play in the local park and go to the public library and eat in the local restaurants, and they're all gone now. And there's going to be all these displaced people. It's very tempting to back out and just do 30,000 foot stuff. I'm going to give you some more newsy stuff. Rick Caruso used private firefighters to save the Palisades Village Mall. This has come up. We're getting more details on this as well. But his mall, beautiful mall, very upscale, has got an Air One in it. Any of you who've been to an Air One know that it's upscale if there's an Air One there. That's a place where you get a juice smoothie and it's like $22 or literally over $20 for a smoothie. They've got the most genius marketing for all their products. It's, I wouldn't say I'm a fancy boy, but it's too much for me. I got to say, the Air One. So maybe I can get convinced. I like the produce, but I can't buy anything else in there. $22 shake turns me off. Anyway, it's a fancy place, and he hired a private fire company to put out all of the fires. Isn't that unbelievable? This was the guy who narrowly lost the mayoral race, and the Palisades voted for him, but Karen Bass won because of all the wokesters who thought it was really important to have an actual communist. She's a literal card-carrying communist. That was a better fit. He was the water commissioner. I think there should maybe be a role that you can't be the mayor unless you're the water commissioner first in this city. It doesn't work well for me if I ever want to run for mayor one day. But because I don't know if I want to run for water commissioner first. That sounds like a hard job. Mayor sounds fun. Water commissioner doesn't sound as fun. But that's the point. You see the point I'm making? You don't just get to be mayor. Go do something hard. Go be the water commissioner first. In a city that is constantly plagued by drought, go do that first. So we got some video of Caruso talking. This is from 2022. So this is him on the campaign trail. Listen to this.
I've been going around the city talking to firefighters and talking to paramedics. I've been talking to residents, and there's a deep concern throughout this city that the paramedics and the firefighters are understaffed because their budget has not been restored. From 15 years ago, when it was cut back, we have fire stations throughout this city that aren't mobilized because they don't have the staffing to do it, and it's just wrong. My plan as mayor is simple. We are going to restore the budget to bring the staffing levels back, to give the residents of Los Angeles the service they pay for and deserve. And that's the only way a city can be a great city. We have to reprioritize our budget in this city to make sure that our residents are safe and they're protected. And we can't do that unless we have a fire department that is fully funded and fully staffed.
There's one problem with this guy. Good-looking white guy. That's the problem. You can't have it. We need him to be a overweight BIPOC lesbian, and then we would get, all of a sudden people would start listening to him. I think that's it, right? But what's the explanation? Is it, can you have a guy, you just can't have a guy that looks like that win now. I think that's the issue. It feels off. That was 2 years ago. That was a perfect explanation of what the city needs. It doesn't need more abortions. It doesn't need more DEI fire chiefs. I'm actually not entirely joking. I mean, it's obviously it's a little bit of a joke about you can't have too good looking of a white guy, because if he's a Democrat, that'd be fine. Newsom's a good looking white guy, so they pick him. But it's very striking because the last time I was at that Palisades Mall, which I do go to, it's not my usual rotation, but we go a couple times a year in the Marlows, and I was there fairly recently, and there was this table at one of the restaurants. It had to have been set up for 20 people or so, and everyone was just fantastic looking. All ages, races, a lot of diversity, everyone put together. It was a Sunday afternoon, and they'd gotten dressed up to go out for a big gathering as a family or friends or whatever it was. And I was walking back and forth with a couple of my babies and thinking, wow, what is going on there? That is such a good advertisement for this facility, like that type of group. I don't know who these people are. I didn't recognize any of them. I was wondering, who are these people? These are, I want to be at this party. So I walked back and forth, and after one or two laps, because those of you with small kids know that you make a lot of laps sometimes when you're at the mall, and one of the other family members has something specific to do. And then I noticed someone sits down at the head of the table who looks like Frank Sinatra, and it's Rick Caruso. It's him. He's the guy. And I was thinking, oh, it's his place. This guy is treating his place with respect. He likes to be here. He's proud of it. He's proud of the people around him. He's ambitious. This guy's an achiever. And he's not a bullshitter. Excuse my friend, Missy, you can bleep that for the so I get the family ratings. But he's not a BSer, okay? He's not a BSer. But maybe that's the problem, is that there's something off. Looks too put together. We need to have sloppy people that fit a bunch of woke categories, a bunch of woke points. He's got 0 woke points. That's the issue. Wealthy, white, straight, handsome man. Can't have that. Unless, of course, you're a Democrat. Then it might be okay. Gavin Newsom got confronted by a woman, and this was unbelievable. Let me play this.
Governor, you got a second?
Sees his motorcade coming by, sees his black SUV. She tracks him down.
That was my daughter's school, Governor. Please tell me what you're going to do. I'm not going to hurt him, I promise.
I'm literally talking to the president right now to specifically answer the question of what we can do for you and your daughter.
Can I hear it? Can I hear your call? Because I don't believe it.
I'm sorry. There's literally, I've tried 5 times. That's why I'm walking around to make the call.
Why is the president not taking your call?
Because it's not going through. So
Why?
I have to get cell service.
So let's get it. Let's get it. I want to be here when you call the president.
I appreciate it. I'm doing that right now.
Is this another basically, why don't they have cell service? Have they talked to Musk? The Starlink thing was working during the hurricane in North Carolina. Like, or is he too prideful? Go reach out to Musk and say, hey, Elon, I know we got our differences, but can we get some of the Starlink things up in the air for us? Ridiculous.
Doing that right now, and it's to immediately get reimbursements, individual assistance, and to help you on.
Okay, so he's talking about money. This is how Democrats think. He's just talking about money. He's got good body language. He's speaking calmly. He's not dismissing this woman. He's not being smug. He's got the performance art down. But what's the content? The content is we will get you money after the fact. That's all he's got.
Devastated for you. I'm so sorry, especially for your daughter. I have 4 kids. Losing the school.
Everyone who went to school there, they lost their homes. They lost 2 homes because they were living in one and building another. Governor, please tell me, what are you going to do with the president right now?
We're getting the resources to help rebuild.
Why was there no water in the hydrants, Governor?
That's all literally.
Is it going to be different next time?
It has to be. Has to be. Of course.
What are you going to do?
I'm doing
to
everything
fill the hydrants. I would fill them up personally. You know that.
I literally.
I would fill up the hydrants myself.
I understand.
But would you do that?
I would do whatever I can.
But you're not. I see the. Do you know there's water dripping over there, Governor? There's water coming out there. You can use it.
I appreciate it. I'm going to make the call to address everything I can right now, including making sure people are safe.
I'd like to make sure you do. Can I have an opportunity?
Agonizing. He gets in the car. Look, he's nothing to say. It's the water that's dripping out, by the way. That was what I mentioned earlier, is that the physics of the water pressure in the hydrants it's fairly complicated. I've been trying to get clean explanations of all of it so I can relay it to you guys. It's slightly harder at elevation. That's an issue. But there's all the stuff that could have been prepared for. Like, we could have prepared for this. Obviously, if everyone's trying to get water out of the hydrant at the same time, there's not going to be enough pressure. So people are running all their hoses. They're trying to hose everything down. Like, of course, that's going to affect it. It's that we're not that good. We're not that good. So, but why is it that the expectation for Democrats in particular is that they only prepare for when things are going great? Why isn't it that we need to prepare? We don't prepare for when things fail. And what Rick Caruso was talking about on the campaign trail was not when things are going great and we've got a great fire department, and now can we get a few more Latinx Q pluses in there and some four-spirit furries over at the police force? Like, if everything is worked out, then maybe fine. Like, well, hey, we got no four-spirit furries on the force. We should probably get one in there. All right. Is everything else perfect? Yep. We've done everything else. But when we don't have dependable fire hydrants, when we don't have a sense that if there's a big fire that breaks out, that we are able to, we don't have fire breaks. We haven't cleared enough brush. We don't have enough water conservation. So what was done to prepare? We know nothing. We know nothing that was done to prepare. No National Guard presence, as far as we can tell. I think that's going to begin, but just why is that so slow? I don't get it. Oof, here's a scary one. We're in a 90-hour earthquake warning in California between now and the 13th. So, scary. Early estimates coming in $130 to $150 billion in damage. Those are fake numbers. We don't know what that means. The numbers are so high. I'll have Coney for us at Breitbart News break that down. I'll talk to him about it. And so we'll have reporting on that. I'll bring it to the show when I know. But just shows you that that'll be a record. 10,000 plus structures burned down. Again, we're talking already minimum 20 times bigger than the Bel Air fire, which we still talk about from 50, 60 years ago. So, there's a bunch of other fires that are still going on. We have a very minimal level of containment. Some fires are still at zero level of containment. Some are creeping up there into the at least 30s. Let me play you a flavor of something called the Kenneth fire, which is in another region of LA that has not gotten too out of control yet. But let me just give you a taste of what it's like at one of these fires.
What we know right now is that the incident occurred.
The fire police chief.
And about 30 minutes later, a suspect was detained over in Woodland Hills area by citizens.
So someone purposely set the Kenneth fire?
At this time, that's what we believe, yes.
Do you know how or why they did that?
That I don't know.
Is this a crime scene right now?
Yes.
Okay, there wasn't police. It was senior police. And so the Kenneth fire, one of the fires, They believe it was arson. They have a suspect. I think, I wonder if this is the one, there's someone who zip tied someone who's trying to start something. A homeless man with a blowtorch. That's a different one. Locals were zip tying a homeless guy with a blowtorch. So here's what happens. And this is the scary thing, is that the people set the fires with arson so they can loot, because we have a culture of looting. A lot of this comes from George Gascon and George Soros, where the nonviolent crime doesn't get prosecuted. Of course, the arson would get prosecuted, but the looting itself won't necessarily get prosecuted. So you get a wrist slap and you're out on bail that night. Who even knows what's going to happen to you at all? So you set the fire, people all race to put out the fire, and then you loot the homes. The looting takes place. I was asking Joel where he thinks the most vulnerable places are, and it's these neighborhoods where every home's burned out but one or two. There's a lot of smoke. No one's going to go in there and live there for months. So even if your house survived, it's not going to be livable. There's no neighborhood. There's no community. There's lots of smoke, etc. So that's where the looters can come in, and they wait, and then they take stuff. A lot of people are going to have safes that are in their house. They're not going to have gone back and got them. The safes will be heavy, so the looters will be scouring properties for that. Joel told me at any given moment that there's only 7 police cars in West LA that are active, because they don't really go for crime there, because there's not a lot relative to some of the other parts of the city. So how do you redeploy enough resources when there's no leadership? All right. Let's see. What else we got? Yeah, arsonist doing the Kenneth fire, homeless man with the blow tie and zip torch. I hit that. Barbara Streisand talking about how the winds, the Santa Ana winds, were due to climate change. We've always had these winds. And these weren't the highest winds ever. These are winds that were high, but we'd had seen something like this about 10 years ago. I want to say something flat out. And this is something that I'm calling on this audience, I'm calling on all my folks at Breitbart and anyone influential in your life on a local and broader level. This needs to be the Abu Ghraib of the climate change movement. You guys remember the Abu Ghraib story, where there was all these American troops who were abusing prisoners in Iraq? And it kind of make us all have a bad taste in our mouth about the Iraq war. Even those of us who were still supportive of it loosely, as most Republicans were at that point, kind of thinking, I don't know what's going on here, because it doesn't seem like we're accomplishing much. And it looks really bad to see us torture prisoners. Now, of course, we overdid the reaction. The media always does that, where there was a few bad people who they weren't killing anyone. They were just behaving really badly, but they were behaving really, really bad. And it made all of us look bad. And it's inexcusable. It's a terrible look. It made you think, what are we doing that this is happening? Why are we spending time on this? And I think that was sort of the beginning of the end of any credibility that war had, was that moment. This needs to be it for climate change. Because that laundry list that I have noted down, I will continue to repeat, that there were no fire breaks, there wasn't enough brush cleared out, there's no water conservation done, there was nothing done to make sure the hydrants were working, there's no even explanation for why there was gushing water about enough pressure, there's no internet available, there's no FEMA's not even there. FEMA's such a joke, it's not even discussed. So there's no basic education on what to do. There's not sufficient penalties for looters, for arsonists, too many homeless people. All of this should have been mitigated against if you really took climate change seriously. If you really believed in climate change, all these precautions would have been there. Have we heard of any story of someone whose house got saved because they had some sort of elaborate homespun fire retardant system at their house? I can guarantee you there's a few $1 billion that anyone wants to innovate in that level. Because nowadays, anyone who's wealthy is going to add whatever they can to their house to make sure that that it can survive some sort of a fire. Because the insurance companies are not going to be insuring a lot of houses around here going forward. January 20th is the day, and Washington, D.C. is the place. That's when and where Donald Trump will be inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States. He gets a whole new inauguration. It was already 45th. Now it'll be 47. And we want to send you there. You can win a once-in-a-lifetime VIP experience to attend the inauguration in Washington, D.C. It includes airfare for you and a guest to Washington, a 3-night stay in our nation's capital, tickets for the presidential inauguration, and much more. Don't miss this historic opportunity to celebrate the greatness, the history, the excitement of a presidential inauguration. To enter, you see the link in the show notes for this episode or go to SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump. Guys, I've said this, that this is the marquee event on anyone's social calendar for the year, really for the decade for most people. And you get a chance to go. I don't see why you wouldn't give it a shot. Salem Podcast Network/Trump. All you got to do, and you'll get your name on the list. And let's see if you can win. I hope you do. I would like to see it happen, but this has got to be the beginning of the end. I don't want to tolerate any sort of climate change talk anymore. This is your answer. Anytime anyone asks you about climate change in this context, say, well, why didn't people do anything? If they thought climate change was such an inevitability, then of course it would have made fires more likely. Then why didn't they prepare? Why wasn't anyone prepared? Why wasn't the city prepared? Why did they put a woke person in charge of fire? Why did you put a mayor who just wants abortions and only abortions? I always recommend that when you're debating people in your life, that don't really debate them for the most part. I mean, you can if they can handle it, but most people are snowflakes and they can't. Just ask them to explain their asinine positions. I mean, ask them to say, well, why do you think that the Palisades Reservoir was offline for cosmetic purposes when there were high winds and way too much brush and it was a veritable powder keg? Why do you think that was? I mean, do you think that it was a good idea in retrospect to pick the mayor who is obsessed with communism and abortions and not the one who's obsessed with who was a former water commissioner who builds buildings and was able to protect his mall with a private fire department? They're not going to have good answers. And that's why I always like taking that approach, make them explain these things. Ghastly stuff, horrible. I'm doing the thing now where I keep thinking of landmarks, places where I took Mrs. Dr. Marlow on dates, places where we've gone with the kids, places where my parents have gone, to seeing, is it still there? Is it still around? Very odd circumstances. So, all right, let me go through a couple other news items just for the sake of variety. And then I've got a ton of email, as I noted. I won't get to all of it, but keep emailing me. Please keep emailing me. A couple other things I just want to flag before they get stale. According to report, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, seeking more power, telling top Democrats that she's matured. I'm pairing this with Tim Walz endorsing David Hogg for a top DNC role. This is where the Democrats are lost. That these are the people who we've rejected, the woke crowd, the progressives. And they're going to try to push for more power because of the disarray within the party. Because they're younger, that they think that maybe they are entitled to more power. But they're the people who we're rejecting on a national level. They might be popular on social media. They might be popular on Bluey. On Bluey, I bet they're great. AKA Blue Sky, the Democrats' Twitter. But they're the exact type of people who the country is rejecting. So there's something that I'm rooting for here. I'm kind of rooting for them to get anointed and appointed because I do think it reflects poorly on the entire party. So keep an eye on that. More on that to come. Let's see. We got some economic numbers. We've got a huge blowout jobs report. Where is it? I'm going to lose my jobs report data. Could pull it up fast. We saw a payroll increase of 256,000, way more than expected. I think this is Trump related. I mean, we're going to see how the fires affect this going forward. But this is something that is clearly another victory for Trump. The Trump effect is how John Carney framed it for us at Breitbart News. Unemployment rate falling. And so people are just excited about the prospect of jobs in America. People feel like their interest rates are going to go down relative at least to their amount that they're able to bring in, their revenue. So another win for Trump, and we'll see how much this can sustain itself. But this is going to be we got to see if it can sustain itself. All right. Spending on streaming services down 23% in a single year. I like this. We got too many streaming services. I just note this for all of you who feel like you're in that same boat as I am. Way too many streaming services. Domestic movie ticket sales are collapsed 46% since 2004. Now, it won't be 46% total box office, but it'll be the amount of tickets sold. So box office is down, but also the amount of tickets sold is way, way, way down because people are just not going for that theatrical experience. John Nolte's written some essays on that. I'll plug that over at Breitbart.com. You head over there. This is really fresh as we're taping. Mark Zuckerberg did a Joe Rogan show where he talked about the Biden administration pressuring him to censor. So Zuck 2.0, do not miss my show from earlier this week where I broke down the importance of Facebook censorship and what a big deal it will be if Zuckerberg really does change and allow for more freedom on his platform, how that's just going to open up debate in an amazing way. And better late than never. Look, I want my reparations. I want my reparations for the Facebook censorship from the past decade. But if he's coming around, it sounds like he is. He was saying that the Biden administration was yelling at his staff because they wouldn't censor a meme about COVID vaccines. Just a really lukewarm meme, too. The Meta is going to remove their DEI programs, another olive branch to Trump. And last one I'll mention before we get to the emails, Pete Hegseth's Nazi tattoo showed up on the cover of Jimmy Carter's funeral program. So we had Jimmy Carter's funeral this week. I would have done more on that, but too much other news. But that specific cross that Hegseth has tattooed on him, the Jerusalem cross, or the Crusaders cross. So that was the one where everyone said there was a Nazi symbol. Well, it was on Jimmy Carter's funeral pamphlet. So there you go. Just to remind you that if there was no fake news, there'd be almost nothing for the establishment media to cover at all. All right, let's get to some of your beautiful emails. Again, aloha@alexmarlow.com if you'd like to be a part of the show. And I'm loving reading your emails. If the volume increases like it has been, I won't be able to get to all of them, but I still read all of them and I savor them. And I will read many of them on the air. And if you've gotten on the air before, that does not mean you will not get on the air again. So by all means, keep them coming. All right, Alex, this is from Dan in Daytona Beach, Margaritaville. My thoughts on how we eradicate the far left extremism is we just need to let cities like Chicago, LA, San Francisco, New York burn down. Now, I mean that figuratively. My thought is only when people begin to experience the full extent of these extreme policies will they be able to recognize the reality of the situation. And over the past year, I began to feel these cities and their citizens are at the beginnings of the burning. So let me talk about this. First of all, I've always disagreed. I find this to be, and no offense to Dan, I find this to be a deeply anti-Christian and just an indecent position that people should just suffer. Now, do I admit as a individual, as it did not cross my mind, that people are getting what they voted for, an election of consequences, and you reap what you sow? Of course I've had that thought. But I think rooting for cities to fail in the United States of America really does lose the plot, is that we are the United States of America. And diversity really is a strength of ours. And I love the idea that we've got big sky country and we also have some of the most vibrant cities in the country. And I like the idea that there is an Iowa and that there is a Florida and that there is a California and that there is a Washington. And all of these things end up making an amazing mosaic of a country. So I don't like the idea that I had a fond part of my heart was in New York. I've never loved New York, but I always liked visiting a few times a year. It was never a place I wanted to call home, but I always thought it was very cool that we've got people who are putting on actual plays, like theater, a form of Americana art. And the eating is the best place in the world. The best place in the world to eat is New York City. And it's not even close. That's all culturally very relevant. The fact that Hollywood, even though it's disappointed us lately over the last 100 years, has been the greatest cultural center on planet Earth is a good thing. And it's worth trying to preserve it if we can. It's probably too late. But giving up is not something, I'm not fond of giving up on things that are meaningful and important. So rooting on these cities to fail just because you got people who vote the wrong way. I'm not of that mindset. Continuing on, based on the premise, let me ask you a question. I do not intend this as mean-spirited manner. The people in LA voted for the situation they're in. So should we feel sorry for them or should we expect This may be the figurative fire that they needed to come to their senses. And my final question, why would any conservative or centrist stay in California? I don't want you to tell me your personal business, but give us some high-level reasons why you or people like you would move back or remain in a place that I'm sure drives you crazy every single day. Okay, great questions. Let me go through them case by case. So, should you feel sorry for people who voted for the situation they put them in? Not everyone does. Here's the thing. If you are someone who is creative-minded, if you're a person who is in the entertainment world, if you're a person who does financial stuff, LA is a good place to do all that. If you're a restaurateur, if you're someone who is in the medical world, there's a lot of innovation down here. The tech world, there's a lot of tech people down here. The suggestion that we're all libs is absurd. Now, there's too many libs, so they all run our government. There's a lot of normal people who are here for a couple of reasons. I'll give you those reasons. First of all, it's commerce. It's business. I've given this background a little bit other places. I don't know if I've done it specifically on my own show. But when Mrs. Dr. Marlow was applying for fellowships for medical school, this is for perfect medical training, post-residency. So 2 steps removed from medical school. The way the process works is you put places and institutions, hospitals where you'd feel comfortable, and you rank them, and then you interview these places, you give them your resume, and then they rank you, and then there's a matching process, and you get assigned a certain place. Now, we put a variety of places where we would have been comfortable, some in the DC, Virginia area, some in the South, and some in California where we have a big network and we have family and there's benefits there. And we just we got assigned out here. It's not really a choice. And so us card-carrying members of conservative movement, people who are upstanding citizens, never been arrested, don't have unpaid parking tickets, building nice families, we get assigned out here. And she gets to do the job she was meant to do her whole life, which was she has a calling. Her calling is dealing with sick people with cancer. And if you've known her as long as I have, you kind of know that this was always meant to be, that would be her work. It just so happens that Breitbart's headquartered in Brentwood, where Andrew Breitbart and Larry Solov, our CEO and president, grew up. There's a lot of people, and I gave that laundry list on yesterday's show, I don't need to repeat it, of all these conservatives, but I even thought of more of them, like Victor Davis Hanson, the Hoover Institute. I mean, there's all these people who are out here. Devin Nunes, you guys love Devin Nunes. He's out here. There's all these people from California. You learn a lot living with people who don't agree with you on everything. California has some of the best potential for agriculture. It's got the best coastline in the country, maybe the world. It's got the best weather. It's got the most culture. It's got amazing food. It's got the best shopping. Not all of this speaks to you. If you just want big open spaces, it is not the best place for you. If you like lush and green all the time, I love lush and green. It's not the best place for you. But if you like the ocean, if you don't like to be landlocked, if you like to eat and if you like to shop, and by the way, it's not just left-wingers who like that stuff. This is a good place to be. And if you actually like diversity, there is a lot of diversity here. I do like diversity. I happen to. I don't think that being in a completely homogenous society culturally would be a benefit. I like to see my horizons expanded. And I like to be challenged. It's more fun for me. I don't like to just have it easy all the time. I don't. It's not for everyone, but it's just not how I'm wired. So why are we out here? The short story for me is we're out here because we were assigned out here and because our family's out here. And sometimes a place just becomes your home. I'm not saying we wouldn't move. We'll definitely consider moving after all this. I have no idea what the city's going to look like. I mean, think about if you're a Palisades resident and you go from walking to school and going to the park and playing ball with your friends in the street and walking to the neighbor's house, riding your bike around, and now the street's been eviscerated. Like it's an alien movie, an alien invasion movie. What do? Your childhood is completely upended. Changes people. It's going to change people. And you guys are going to get a lot of these people as refugees. And if you're hostile to them, it won't reflect well on where you are. So it's a great question. And I want to take it seriously. A lot of you are thinking this. All right, let's continue. Caroline McNulty. Hi, Alex. I just listened to your podcast with Mike Slater. This is a Breitbart News daily show from SiriusXM, and I was on this morning. I noticed that you were very subdued. I don't think I was subdued. It's 5 a.m. where I'm at. Guys, if I look tired or sound tired, let me break it to you. It's because I'm tired. We're round the clock here right now. So I was doing a 5 a.m. show. Cut me some slack, Carolyn. But I think she cares about me. Having been through 2 San Diego fires, I get it. I thought the danger and uncertainty were hard with 1 child. You have 4. I appreciate your list of great conservatives based in California. There are many. Gives me hope for my former state. Cool. I dig it. The woman who called from Louisiana got me thinking, okay, so a woman called from Louisiana today and was scolding me and Mike for not knowing the center of the country, saying we need to get out into real America. And I had some responses, but let's see what Carolyn says. We probably all think that our personal America is the real America. I can't imagine living in a big city, but I know that there are big city residents who can't imagine living in the small town. Perhaps we should focus on personal qualities of being American rather than geography. Beautiful. City people can and do love their communities. Joel Pollack is showing us that to the world. Zibby Owens, a podcaster and bookstore owner who lives part-time in the Palisades, is too. I'm really looking forward to hearing about the Rice Krispie treats, the vanilla bean. I got to do it. Thank you for podcasting through this difficult time. My prayers are with you, Carolyn McNulty. Yeah, Joel is doing beautiful stuff. I was noticing I was on Rumble today, and on the trending page, the front page, we had 4 Breitbart videos. My interview on Don Jr.'s podcast yesterday, and then my podcast from yesterday was on the second page of Rumble trending. So people are noticing our stuff, which I very much appreciate. This is well said. I don't have a lot to add. I will say, anyone who's curious, and this is on the Breitbart News Daily podcast, if you get that, and those of you who are not SiriusXM subscribers, we had a caller call in and lecture Mike on not getting out into the middle of the country. Mike lives in Tennessee, so he lives in the middle of the country. And I had a talk show where I talked to callers from the middle of the country all day, every day, 3 hours a day. So I don't know if that gives me enough bona fides, but I feel pretty good about it. Talking to truck drivers traversing the country for 7 years in the morning for 3 hours feels pretty good. But if you're someone who is from the South, if you're from the Northeast, if you're from the Midwest, whatever it is, don't be a supremacist. Be open-minded. There's other great ways of life in this country. The same way I'm not a supremacist about my way of life. I'm constantly critical about my city/suburban living, the highs and lows of it. I will give you the good with the bad. The good is the weather's really great. The shopping's really great. The food's really great. The getaway vacations is really great. I can get to Hawaii. I can get to DC. All that's really great. I love all that stuff. The homelessness, the crime, the DA, the tax rate, all those are really bad. The fire preparedness is really bad. So you can do this stuff in a way that's a little more nuanced. I know nuance is dying, but it's important. Anyway, all right, I got to cut off. There's so many more great emails I want to get to, but I guess the show's getting long, and I want you guys to actually download these things. So we're pushing an hour at this point. A lot more to talk about next week. So keep those emails coming. I'll try to make some more time, but today was pretty big with more fire updates plus the Merch On stuff. So please tell 10,000 friends and family members about the show. I think these are highly informative and highly personal. So hopefully that adds a little entertainment value. And we will talk to you next week. Thanks, producer Misty. Thanks to all of you telling 10,000 friends and family members about the one and only Alex Marlow Show. Talk to you next time.